When a 911 call alerts emergency services to a fire in Charleston, it ends up as the deadliest firefighting disaster since 9/11. It's Monday, June 18, 2007, and an emergency call requests services to a fire in Charleston. Fire crews respond immediately, with the first truck arriving just 3 minutes later. The call leaves 9 firefighters dead. Charleston, South Carolina, has a long and proud tradition of firefighting. In 2007, the department had 237 firefighters and 19 companies spread across the city. It's a tight-knit profession, with personnel spending up to 24 hours together on call every 3 days. That Monday, Charleston dispatchers received the first 911 call at 7 minutes past 7 p.m. The caller shouts there's a big fire behind a warehouse in the commercial hub. They urge emergency services to hurry as smoke is pouring out of the building. Moments after the first call, the alarm sounds at Engine Company 11, where the crew are sitting down for dinner. The station is less than a mile from the blaze, and the men grab their firefighting gear and head towards 1807 Savannah Highway, Charleston, home to the Sofa Superstore. Engine 11 arrives at the 42,000 square foot furniture store at about 10 past 7 with sirens blaring. The building sits on nearly 2 acres of land, and the crew can see thick smoke pouring from a loaded dock area, a space where store workers are known to take their cigarette breaks. Firefighters get to work immediately, attacking the exterior fire. Assistant Fire Chief Larry Garvin, the highest-ranking officer on the scene, assumes operational command. Donning his protective coat and helmet, he enters the front of the building, along with 2 other firefighters to assess the situation. Garvin is no stranger to the store, having spent an hour just a week prior selecting furniture for a new fire station down the road. According to media reports, Garvin also led a walkthrough of that very building in 2006 to plan how crews would respond to a potential fire there. But Garvin's 2006 plans did not include the potentially hazardous steel truss system which supports the roof over the vast showroom floor area, a construction design that creates concealed spaces overhead where fires can grow without detection. Ominously, this type of design is called widowmakers by the firefighting fraternity. Garvin initially sees no signs of fire inside the building and concludes that the showroom is safe. But as he opens the double doors connecting to the warehouse, the fire rips them from his hands as it swallows the fresh oxygen. The pull is immense, and Garvin can't shut the door as flames push through the showroom. 4 minutes later, the crew from Ladder 5 are among the first to go inside the building with hoses to try to contain the fire. Engine 16 and 19's crew rush inside soon after with an additional hose line. But the crews have difficulty dousing the rapidly spreading blaze with insufficient water pressure. In publicly released radio transmission recordings, several firefighter crews are heard calling for more water pressure on several occasions. The department's hoses have a smaller diameter than most others, and on top of that, water supply lines are running across the busy Savannah Highway, where cars are continuously hampering the pressure by driving over the hoses. When Fire Chief Rusty Thomas arrives on the scene, he puts on his white chief helmet and takes command, redeploying trucks, coordinating incoming support and monitoring water supplies. However, the city's command system dictates that such tasks be delegated so that the chief's main focus lies on combating the fire. A sofa store employee, Jonathan Tyrell, is working in a small workroom off the warehouse when he becomes aware of the fire. Tyrell can hear the sirens and knows the only way out is through the warehouse. But when he opens the door, a blazing tower of furniture blocks his escape. This would only be the start of the disaster. Jonathan Tyrell tried calling 911 just before 7:30. His first attempt failed and he tried to call his wife, but that call also failed. Miraculously, the second 911 call went through, even though Tyrell said he'd never been able to get cell phone reception from that spot before. The operator transferred him to a firefighter on the scene, who told him to calm down, hug the floor, and wait. As the thick black smoke enveloped everything around him, Tyrell wondered if he would ever see his wife and daughter again. He banged on tables, cabinets, and metal walls, hoping the noise would signal his location to rescue crews. 5 minutes after his call, a firefighter's axe cut through the wall and pulled him out of the building. Tyrell would be the last person rescued from the sofa superstore. The situation inside the showroom continued to deteriorate, with visibility extremely limited by the thick black smoke and stacked furniture hampering the movement and bearings of firefighters inside. By 7:31 p.m., more than a dozen men had been using their breathing apparatus for at least 18 minutes, leaving them running severely low on air. Radio transmissions painted a bleak picture of the conditions inside, with firefighters heard shouting unintelligibly. One firefighter was anxiously screaming that he had lost connection with his hose, a life-threatening situation inside a building fire, as firefighters know to follow their hoses back to the safety of the truck outside, especially in low visibility conditions. Then, at 7:32, the call comes in that no one wants to hear. Mayday echoes across the radio. A second firefighter communicates his dying wish to the chief directly. Car 1, please tell my wife that I love you. Chief Thomas issues a radio silence so he can communicate with the crew inside. Then another voice is heard from inside uttering the final words of a solemn prayer. In Jesus' name, Amen. 24 minutes into the fire, the chief had no idea who sounded the Mayday call and didn't know how many fighters were still trapped inside. But he did know that the situation inside was dire and possibly fatal. Shortly after, a message came in from dispatch that the engineer of Ladder 5's emergency button had been activated. It was Mike French, but any attempt to reach him by radio proved unsuccessful. Several alarm devices attached to firefighters' air packs were eerily heard echoing in the darkness. These alarms are engineered to be activated when in distress or automatically when a firefighter goes down for longer than 24 seconds. Firefighters frantically started smashing the store's front windows to create exit points for trapped firefighters inside and entry points for firefighters who tried to gain entry into the building to assist. But this action merely fueled the blaze by feeding it more oxygen from outside to continue its vicious rampage. Thick black smoke billowed out from the smashed windows, which indicated that the fire was burning at an extremely high temperature and could potentially lead to a hostile event such as a flashover. Flashovers typically occur when fresh oxygen is introduced to a high-intensity fire within an enclosed space. This reaction leads to the spontaneous combustion of all the combustible materials near the fire. At 7:38 p.m., the chief ordered everyone to evacuate immediately. The crew outside watched helplessly as the flames burned white-hot. Less than 7 minutes later, the showroom's roof collapsed in a thunderous crash. Onlookers said a wave of heat and ash flew over everyone's heads before the fire shot up 30 feet into the sky as the rest of the building collapsed. At that point, the death toll was unknown. The true extent of the tragedy was still unfolding, and the exact number of fatalities would only be discovered much later when rescue teams combed the area. The fire was finally under control by 10 p.m., 3 hours after the first 911 call. The grief-stricken firefighters respectfully saluted as the bodies of their fallen brothers were brought out one by one while the search continued. By 4 a.m., the broken fire department brought out the bodies of the last 2 firefighters. 9 bodies were found in the smoking embers of the showroom floor. Louis Mulkey, Mike Benke, Melvin Champagne, William Hutchinson, Bradford Beatty, James Drayton, Mark Kelsey, Michael French, and Brandon Thompson all died in the line of duty. The men, ranging in age from 27 to 56, were all career firefighters and had more than 130 years of experience among them. At least 9 other firefighters were injured, barely making it out of the building before the collapse. The firefighter's death left the people of Charleston shocked and saddened. It elicited messages of support the world over, including from President George W. Bush, who called the men heroes. He said they demonstrated great skill and courage, and that their legacy would continue to inspire all Americans. 4 days later, the brave men received a hero's farewell when thousands gathered to pay their final respects. Fire crews from around the world showed up in their numbers. A motorcade of more than 300 fire engines, ladder trucks, ambulances, and command vehicles drove past the 3 fire stations where the 9 men were based. But the nation had so many questions. For starters, how did the firefighters lose their lives responding to what was initially believed to be a fire in a dumpster outside a building? The answers would eventually come out in 2008 in the form of reports released by the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, the National Institute of Service Technology, and an independent investigation report commissioned by the city of Charleston. Investigators used modeling methods and examined debris and constructions, as well as the contents of the store. They also used photographs, interviews, videos, and over 900 radio transmissions to piece together how the deadly blaze spread. The reports made several findings and highlighted 2 main factors leading to the devastating fire. Factors relating to the actual building and the property where the blaze occurred and the operations conducted by the Charleston Fire Department. It found that the Sofa Superstore had several high fire risks, which added to the volatility of the situation. The fire could have been prevented if the property had been built and maintained in accordance with state and local codes. It included additions to the structure, mainly constructed out of wood and enclosed by sheet metal. The additions were reportedly constructed without building permits and violated several code requirements. A few examples of this were the open floor plan and the hidden buildup of combustible smoke and gases due to the spaces between the drop ceiling and the roof of the main showroom. The reports say that the fire could have been contained quickly and with minor damage had the store been fitted with a sprinkler system as required by city and state ordinances. Additionally, it may have been less severe if highly combustible materials were not stored close to a smoking area. And firefighters may have been able to find their way out of the inferno if the required exits were maintained correctly. But the city of Charleston and the fire department also had a role to play. The building code violations would have been discovered if the city of Charleston had conducted regular fire inspections and if firefighters had been trained to look out for code violations during pre-fire planning visits. The investigation panel concluded that the department was understaffed and unprepared and used outdated equipment in responding to the fire. It found that the undersized hoses left the crew without the volume of water needed to contain a fire burning in the ceiling overhead. The aggressive firefighting techniques of the Charleston Fire Department also came under scrutiny. The report concluded that the offensive tactics used by the department exposed fire crews to excessive and avoidable risks. The reports, which included a timeline of the events of the evening, found that officials did not assess the situation accurately by not evacuating the crew from the fire sooner. It also noted that Chief Thomas ordered the smashing of the store's front windows when he realized firefighters were trapped in the smoke-covered showroom, an action which resulted in oxygen entering the building, accelerating a flashover which ignited the showroom. But the panels agreed that very few options were available at the time. It said the best way to remove smoke would have been to make a hole in the roof. However, there were not enough firefighters or equipment at the scene to follow protocol. It was initially thought that the men had died due to the collapse of the structure's roof, but the coroner's report found no crushing injuries, concluding that the men died from smoke inhalation and thermal burns. Chief Rusty Thomas told the panel that he accepted responsibility for the loss of life and was sorry that he could not have done something different that night to bring back the 9 firefighters. Thomas retired after the release of the reports. In February 2011, the state of South Carolina ruled that no criminal charges would be filed for prosecution in the Sofa Superstore fire. An independent inquiry found that the issues raised did not warrant a criminal investigation. 4 months later, the Sofa Superstore settled civil claims from the families of the 9 firefighters to the tune of $1.9 million. It also settled with 9 other firefighters who claimed emotional and physical ailments due to the fire. It's believed more than $18 million was paid in settlements involving more than 24 defendants. The Sofa Superstore was never rebuilt. The city bought the 3 acres of land in 2008 and created a park with unique memorial markers for the 9 men at the locations where their bodies were found. The newly built Fire Station 11, now stands adjacent to the memorial park with 9 floor-to-ceiling windows in honor of the men, overlooking the urban memorial. Several recommendations made by the reports have since been implemented to prevent future tragedies. The department acquired larger air tanks and new uniforms after it found that firefighters' uniforms had melted due to the intensity of the flames. And fire stations now have more trained personnel to size up fires effectively and assess what resources are needed for each situation. New state-of-the-art equipment, such as thermal imaging cameras and wider diameter hoses, has also aligned the department with industry standards. Incident commanders now operate from within a command vehicle, which improved the ability of the fire chief to monitor communications and keep track of resources. Building code enforcement now falls under the umbrella of the fire department, with the establishment of a fire marshal division to oversee code enforcement, fire prevention, and bar and nightclub inspections. The legacy of the men is memorialized through an emblem bearing 2 axes, a large number 9, and the numbers 6-1807, worn as a pin by local firefighters. The design also features on firefighting apparatus, along with the names of the fallen heroes. A bell hanging outside the station tolls 9 times at 9 a.m. every morning, reminding Charleston of the tragedy that unfolded on June 18, 2007. Watch this episode next if you found this video interesting. Please add a like and leave a comment if you want to support the channel.